But is it possible? But like, is it legally possible to do?
It's wrong.
Ethically, let's say.
It's wrong. It's not. I mean,
But
it's.
then why are we
You can make it
studying
happen.
it
Well, you know what?
as a method? Because they are.
But it's
proposing.
because it's been done in the past. People have done that. And that's wrong. It's wrong. I would not encourage anyone to go into community wearing a different mask.
Yeah.
You know,
There was that
pretending
book
to be
called
someone
Black
that you're not.
Like Me.
But I understand that there's
Yeah.
agencies that do that.
Yeah, and that's wrong.
So we cannot do that for any kind of research.
You should not. Let it.
No.
You should not do it. You should not do
But
it.
why not? I mean, they're doing it.
Because, you know, when you do something like that, then what happened to informed consent? You don't have that, right?
It's
Yeah.
doable.
You don't have it. You don't have that. That means you're violating their rights.
How do you?
You're violating their rights. I mean, you pretend to be somebody that you're not. If you're gonna go into any
Yeah, but let's say you're not going to hurt them. You just want to see them.
well, you're hurting them by not telling them the truth.
Yeah.
What if you're just...
Because they're gonna share their resources with you. They're gonna share their stories
Yeah,
with you.
but then you're not a participant.
But then, is it a method? Is it a method or not?
But look at it, he said it's wrong. It's a
But
method, but it's wrong.
It's
It's
a
a
method.
It's a method.
Of course, it's a method. But it's a method to collect data which is wrong. Then don't do it. It's not, well, you can find ways to justify it if you want, but I would not encourage any of my students to go into a community to pretend to be somebody that you're not in order to exploit people's resources. And I call them resources. When someone shares a story with you, that's a resource in itself. You see, if I were to do a study with women of color in Mexico, and you're going to tell me about the struggle that you have faced, you know, with sexism and so on and so forth, without being honest with you, what am I doing to you? I'm busy exploiting your resources to advance my agenda, and that's wrong.
But what if you wanted to study a crack house, for example? I mean, and people do, there's valid research that would come out of that.
But
And
yes,
yet-
people
and-
have done that.
And
But I think that's wrong.
Oh.
Yes, you want to know how, you know, what impact cocaine has on people, and because, you know, they're not gonna, you know, they're not gonna share the story with you out of shame, out of whatever, that fear, and you want to go there and be undercover. Yes,
Or
you can.
get the true,
The true story,
right.
the truth.
If you were.
Yeah. Well, that's the assumption that you make. You assume that you will get the truth if you be undercover. That's not the case.
Mm.
You may or may not. Whereas if you are honest with them, they might be willing to share something. Or not. Yes. Research is a very risky endeavor. It's not, there's no guarantee when doing research. There's no guarantee. You might start collecting, you might be involved in research with lots of hope, you know. And then you get to a point where you feel somewhat demoralized because you are very disappointed because you're not really getting what you thought you'd get.
That's what she was talking about last week too.
Yeah.
That some people had used it in that way, and that people were feeling marginalized.
Right. Right. And why don't you go down?
Well, what about just going in and observing? Not necessarily talking and interviewing people.
Or
just,
asking questions.
Just
being-
observing what's going on.
Right, and that would be okay. But in order to be allowed to do that, you have to let you in. Let's say that I'm not part of a group. How could I just go there and observe? They have to let me in somehow. Now, to let me in, I can either lie to them or be honest. I've got to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Being honest probably won't get you shot.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're undercover and you find out, you can get killed.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you want to do. Now, in terms of whole history, let's say that you want to know about. I'm gonna use one of the examples that was given in the book. People were victimized by September 11, right? And you want to do a whole history type of research, right? You want to know how people experience that event, that tragic event, right? Now, are you gonna lie to them, or are you gonna say, hey, you know, I'm interested in knowing, you know, how you've been coping with what happened in September 11? And people they might be willing to share their stories with you. And again, it takes time to build a relationship with your participants. it's not because you are researching from whatever university you're going to open themselves up to you. They have to feel that they can trust you. You are being genuine, right? I love old history. I haven't done much of it. I'm hoping to do that in the next couple years or so. I'm hoping to go to Haiti and start interviewing older folks, because old history is highly valued in Haiti. There are many things that are not documented. Can we have one conversation, please? Because there are people, like where I'm from in Africa, we can talk to that too, because you've been there for a long time. Old history is highly valued because of the lack of formal literacy. People are knowledgeable. They can tell you stories. They can tell you what happened 50 years ago, years way before you were born. And this type of knowledge is valid. It can help you understand, make better sense of the present, and imagine the future. Now that's the beauty of old history. You go there, and as you learn from the book, you basically your job, if you're gonna do, if you're gonna do old history type of, if you're gonna use as a method to collect data, is basically to sit down and listen. You don't have to have you can have an agenda. You have sort of have a sense of what you hope to gain out of the conversation, but your job is sort of to go with the flow, right? And allow yourself to absorb whatever the person is sharing with you. That's the beauty of old history. You don't have to have a structured, type of conversation with the person. You don't have to have like a set of questions you want to ask. No, because the challenge is that when you have a set of questions and you become somewhat dependent on these questions, and that sort of stops the flow. It stops the flow. Whereas if you just go with an open mind and you go there and listen to whatever the person has to say, and you basically embark on a journey with the person. That's the beauty of old history. Whereas when you are doing in-depth interviews or focus group, you will have an agenda, specific agenda. And if the person deviates from it, you'll find ways to bring the person back to your agenda, right? But in oral history, you should not have an agenda per se. You should go there and explore whatever the person has to share with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? And a focus group is more structured, obviously. Even a focus group, even though you have an agenda of a specific question you want your participant to engage, but they're going to end up sharing things that perhaps you could not anticipate they would be talking about. And you're not there to dictate what they should be talking about, because sometimes they might not even respond to you. They might respond to other participants in the same group. You see? And that's the beauty of each method, because they all have their own parameters, and you need to be aware of those parameters, right? With that said, I'm going to try to have you try out a focus group experiment. Like I announced earlier, I'm going to ask you to have maybe 3 groups. One from each group will serve as a moderator, will facilitate the conversation, and you need to come up with a topic that you want to explore. Pretend as if you are the researcher, the person who's going to be selected to facilitate the discussion. You need to assume that you are the researcher and you have a group of people that you get together to talk about an issue that you're interested in. That's the main objective of having a focus group. If you're interested in, for example, and finding out about violence against women, that would be the theme you want them to talk about. Violence against women. But you can't ever predict what they're going to share with you as regarding violence against women. So with that said, I would like you to form a group of 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. Maybe 3 groups. And one person from that group needs to act as a researcher. So, but you will decide who that person may be. And of course, it's going to be a collaboration type of thing. It's not, the person has to basically dictate what you're doing, but rather sort of facilitate the conversation, okay? So a group of 3, with one person being the researcher, and the rest of the people will be the participants, okay?
Do you want a group of 3 or a group of 5?
Well, there's 5 there.
No, you
Or
want
6
3
there.
groups?
3 groups.
Okay, yeah.
3 groups.
You want to come with us?
Okay. Okay, but first you need to agree on the theme you want to explore.